The Second Book of Enom, written by Son of Enderlord. Chapter 1. After Enom had rallied the world against King Flammus and had won, he became the most influential, the most powerful, and the most popular man to live in all of Ortuna. Couples began to name their children after Enom. Nations began to adopt the customs of Zeha Enom. Men began to build altars to King Arthun and worshipped him. King Enom's life story, from him being a robber to being redeemed to kingship, moved the people much, and his story was published to all the known lands of Ortuna, and the portal was closed off. However, those who gave into the voice of King Flammus turned to worship him, and when they learned that King Enom had slain Flammus, they rebelled against the Zeha Enomite Empire and laid many attempts on the life of King Enom and his wives and children. Therefore, nations seceded and formed, the kingdom of Zalmon, the kingdom of Tannin, and the kingdom of Enom, and adopted the name the kingdom of Sheleg. All formed and fought against the Zeha Enomite Empire. Zachiah the Zituite was crowned king of Zalmon. Benaiah of Zeha Enom was crowned king of Tannin, and Ashish the son of Esan of Sheleg was king of Sheleg. And this was the motive for Ashish's rebellion. When Enom was a robber, he slew Ashish's parents for speaking against him, back when he was a wicked man prior to his encounter with King Arthun. Ashish saw the kind of man that Enom was and desired his death. But he was dumbfounded when Enom became king and repented publicly. And him and those of Sheleg did not forgive him and attempted failed rebellions when Sheleg, Enom, became a province of Zeha Enom. Ashish even gave into the voice of Flammus and almost became a disciple of his and adopted the worship of Ish-Tannin and ruled as chief and governor over the Enom province. It was only when King Enom had slain Flammus that he took the opportunity to secede and crown himself king, and he succeeded in the rebellion and became king. King Zachiah and King Benaiah both made a league against Zeha Enom on this occasion. King Zachiah sent a letter to King Benaiah of Tannin to meet him at the cave of Queen Aisha. He arrived and said to the king of Tannin, "I pray thee, let me make a league with thee. We have a common enemy, as Enom hath slain Flammus, our true king of the overworld. Come, let us become allies and take Dur, for surely the giants will likewise rebel and join us against such oppression." Then King Tuolak and Queen Uma both were broken out of their prisons and conquered the Slime Island and reformed it into the second kingdom of Kuk. And these were all the nations who gave into the voices of Flammus and rebelled against King Enom due to him slaying Flammus. And all of them adopted the worship of Ish-Tannin and committed whoredom in Ortuna. However, the rest and majority of Ortuna sided with Zeha Enom and assisted them against the rebel independent kingdoms. King Enom, upon seeing all of this unfold, wept, saying, "I free the world of Flammus, and now the wicked turn against me. Did I not warn them to not give in to Flammus's voices?" Chapter 2. King Enon of Hud made an alliance with Chief Araphat of Azah, and gave his daughter Amy to Prince Ram of Hud as his wife. King Ashish of Sheleg made a league with King Tuolak of Kuk likewise, and laid constant sea raids against Zeha Enom in hopes of weakening their naval power over the sea. Zeha Enom was attacked from bottom to the top of their current borders. Hud, Ara, Azah, and Zatu assisted Zeha Enom to the north, sending their navy to assist against Kuk and Sheleg. Those of Isham even assisted Zeha Enom to the south against Tannin and Zalmon. However, Dur was divided of opinion on who to side with, as they saw Zeha Enom's power weaken while being attacked by the southern kingdoms at the same time. And these were the capitals of each kingdom. The capital of Zeha Enom was Kezia. The capital of Hud was Tai. The capital of Ara was Ara. The capital of Azah was Azah. The capital of Zatu was Zetu. The capital of Zalmon was Zalmon. The capital of Tannin was Queen Aisha's cave. The capital of Kuk was the slime domain. And the capital of Sheleg was Sheleg Point. Upon seeing their sea raids fail, King Ashish said to King Tuolak, "Our raids are failing. I pray thee, let us seek Ish-Tannin, for he shall assist us and give us victory." So they sacrificed before Ish-Tannin and received no word. A prophet came out before them and cursed the altar, saying, "In a latter day, Ish-Tannin shall be smashed, and the wicked shall have their bones burned before the altars of Ish-Tannin." The two kings were furious, and they sacrificed the prophet before Ish-Tannin. Upon doing so, the ground shook and the image fell and collapsed into huge rubbles, striking fear into the worshippers of Ish-Tanen. To cover this up, the kings lied to the followers, saying, "Do not fret over this rubble, for this is a sign that Enom shall collapse and divide." But they lied to them to cover up their worries. They rebuilt the image and continued to worship thereon. And the sins of Shelag and Kuk were great in those days. And King Enom's and King Ishram's friendship was so great that Enom adopted Ishram as if he were his own son. And he did so when he was 12 years of age. He showered him with gifts on his 13th name day, so much so that his wives were beginning to think that Enom had forgotten about his other 2 children. They confronted King Enom about this, and he apologized to them, and started to give the same treatment to his biological sons. Chapter 3. King Enom and King Ishram went on a hunt in the regrowing woods of Sin and talked. While walking, Ishram saw the remains of the image of Ish-Tanen and said to Enom, "From this day henceforth I no longer recognize my father, King Telek-Conan, as my father, but I recognize thee instead of him, Enom." For he said that out of disgust toward the worship and rituals of Ish-Tanen. This touched Enom's heart, and he embraced him. They eventually brought back a kill and feasted with his other wives. That was the day that softened Enom's heart, causing him to be more open to beget more children. Upon this, King Enom went to his queen and said to her, "I pray thee, let me come into thee and bear me children." Queen Zobia, surprised, said to her husband, "I am joyful upon hearing you saying this, dear husband, but I pray thee, let one of thine other wives have a turn with thee." And Enom took Avital, and he laid with her that night, and she conceived. When his other wives knew of this, they rejoiced and said to King Enom, "Dear husband, let us take turns and share a night with thee." King Enom hearkened unto them, and did as they suggested to him, and they all conceived. And Avital was one of Enom's favorite wives from this occasion. Back when Enom was working under Chief Enan of Hud to carry out assassinations toward competitions to chieftainhood, he grew up as a family with Enan and his children, and thus Avital grew for him, causing her sister Shoshana to be jealous, for she also grew for Enom. Enom had somewhat of feelings toward Avital, but knew not how to love, and attempted to have an affair with her, but did not pull through with it. When they heard that Enom reigned as king there, they said to their father, "Let us become the wives and the queens of Enom." As Chief Enan was finalizing this arrangement, news spread of him being chased off of the throne for his wickedness, becoming a bandit. And both of his daughters wept, with mixed feelings about Enom in their hearts. Later on they heard of Enom's redemption to the throne after proving himself against Ish, and they reconsidered the arrangements, but they chose to be concubines at first, then they became wives of Enom. Eventually Avital conceived and bore Enom one son and one daughter, Zekiah and Lydia. Soon after, Shoshana conceived and bore Enom one son, named Zoran. Then Yael conceived and bore Enom a son, named Uel. Bracha then conceived and bore Enom a son, named Tela. After her, Zini conceived and bore Enom a son, named Saleh. Mari then conceived and bore Enom a son, named Nahath. Because of Enom's love toward Avital, he went back to her, and she conceived a third time, and bore Enom a son, named Zekiah, after his late grandfather. Upon learning this, Shoshana begged Enom to lay with her, and he did so. She conceived for a second time, and bore Enom a daughter named Amal. Queen Zobia, while sitting on her throne, said to her husband, "I desire to bear a child." Thus Enom laid with his wife, and she conceived and bore Enom a third son, and they named him Zeth. And Enom ceased to have more children. And all of Enom's children were born in Kezia, all in a span of 10 years. Chapter 4. By this point, King Enom had reigned for 12 years, and had division and rebellion against his kingdom empire that Arthan had set up for him. King Enom was 20 when he began to reign, and he was 32 years old. Then came the time when Enom was called to the south against Tanan and Dur. He brought with him 30 Tanan-pulled chariots along with 70,000 foot soldiers. He fought at the border of Tanan alongside Isham and King Ishram. King Ishram was 22 years of age, and he was fair to look upon, and he had proven himself very capable and effective in every battle he fought in. King Enom saw this and was pleased. King Enom spoke with his advisors and said to them, "Let us get my adopted son a wife from amongst the fair daughters of Joaz." And the women descended from Joaz were brought before Ishram, but they pleased him not. King Enom went up and said to him, How do these women please thee not? Ishram said to his adopted father, They're not as fair as the tales say. Get me one fairer than they. This struck Enom's heart and made him a bit downcast, driving him further to find a woman more fairer than the fairest women in the world, the daughters of Joaz, Enom's ancestor on his mother's side. Thus Enom sought Ishram's pleasure in a woman. Enom made this into a proclamation, saying, Let all the fairest women come forth into Kezia to be presented before Ishram, my son, so that he may choose among you a queen of Isham. Enom sent the proclamation throughout his empire, and thousands of women traveled from the top of the isles over Ortuna and from the bottom of Dur and Isham. All were presented before Ishram, and every one of them pleased him not, and he shouted in frustration, Is there not a single woman in all of Ortuna that can please me? King Enom knew not what to do, and Ishram stormed out, leaving Enom to deal with the rejected women. Afterward he went and sat next to Ishram and said to him, I understand that you desire the best, but your attitude won't go forgotten. Ishram apologized to his adopted father, saying, Forgive me, I am the last of my father's royal seed, and desire it not to die out despite my hatred toward him. And my people need me, if not me nor my future seed, then who that understands our culture and customs? Once they ceased their speech, they were walking, when Ishram saw Zanya, the daughter of Jerusha of Zatu, the head of the harem. Ishram said to his father, Give me her to be my wife. Enom saw and was reluctant at first, but gave in when Ishram continually begged his father. King Enom privately spoke to Jerusha and said to her, My adopted son, King Ishram of Isham, desired thine daughter to be his wife. I pray thee, give her to him to be his wife, and I shall give thee the dowry. Jerusha said to the king, Behold, my lord, she is already married to another man. And when Enom told Ishram, he went into a fit of rage and shattered his personal belongings in his bedchamber, and yelled at his father and the rest of his family members, and this occurred continually night and day, as if he was possessed by a demon. Ishram did not want to let go of Zanya, the daughter of Jerusha. He therefore snuck out one night and broke into her home in an attempt to lay with her, and she was frightened and ran out with her husband and called for the guards, and they detained him. They presented him before Enom, and Enom said to Ishram, my son, how could you? Ishram said to Enom, his father, Give her to me, lest I die. Enom, forgetting the customs of marriage, then went and begged Zanya, the daughter of Jerusha, to leave her husband and become the wife of Ishram, in hopes to calm him. To Enom's horror, she said to him, If I am to be separated from my husband, then I shall die. Enom retreated to the palace and stressed on what to do. Ishram would eat no bread night and day, and became depressed and fought in no battle. That night, Ishram snuck out and drowned himself in the river that marked the border of Zahah and Dur, and he was dead at the age of 20 and 2 years, only reigning over Isham for 12 years. In the morning, Ishram was found dead, and the thing was told to Enom. Enom wept and ate no bread day and night for 3 days, as he mourned for his adopted son. The enemies and the haters of Zahah Enom accused King Enom himself being the one behind Ishram's drowning in order to have sole control over Isham. Thus Isham rebelled against Zahah Enom, and they seceded and placed a king on the throne, named Ishkar-Ava. Thus Enom only had control over Zahah, and Dur left. Chapter 5. King Ishkar-Ava sent a messenger to Enom, and said to him, How dare thee slay our king? For this thou shalt die. King Enom sent a messenger to Isham, and said to them, I hath not slain thy king. Please stand down, and let us discuss this peacefully. King Ishkar-Ava took this as a sign of weakness, and he went and attacked Zahah Enom, and slew of them 15,000. He went and smote 30,000 Tananites at the border of Tanan, and pushed them toward their capital, taking a good chunk of their land, even emitting 40,000 Ashamites back toward their capital. And a council was formed in Dur in favor of seceding from Zahah Enom, as they saw its power diminish. 4 lords were formed and ousted the king, forcing him to abdicate and reform its government, and fought against Zahah Enom. Thus Enom's only allies were those who were not previously under his empire. King Enom became distressed and prayed earnestly for protection and victory, and his prayers were answered. King Enom took 40,000 men and clashed against the Tananites while he had other forces against his other enemies at the same time. Enom and his 40,000 men fought against the Tananites at a field outside their capital city, and the battle was at a stalemate. At night, Enom took him 500 men and snuck into the capital and smote the entire population there, and took Aisha's cave, and took King Benaiah captive. Afterward, King Enom turned to the north and fought at the borders of Isham and Dur. The 4 lords of the Durites personally led the battle against the Zehah Enomite forces, as Enom was on his campaign to retake previously lost land. Dur and Isham waxed weak since the secession of Dur, and they lost thousands upon thousands of their own troops to the empire, and each were pushed back further into their own territory. Then one battle came where Enom and his 40,000 men were in a fierce battle against 15,000 Ishamites. While there, King Ishkar-Ava saw King Enom in a clear view, past some fighting, and he took him a javelin and casted it toward King Enom, and it smote the left side of his face, giving him a visible scar, and death was avoided to the frustration of Ishkar-Ava. And the battle continued in a Zehah Enomite victory, and Ishkar-Ava took him 6,000 men and fled. Enom then turned to Dur and clashed against the Durite giants and prevailed over them, and Ishtanan could not answer their prayers. Enom even smashed their idols of Ishtanan to prove a point. The Durite giants were so desperate for victory that they ate every man that fell to them in battle in an attempt to strike fear into the hearts of the Zehah Enomite forces. And it did, but King Enom encouraged them to continue the fight. At the border, one of the 4 Durite lords fell by the sword of King Enom himself during the battle. Upon seeing his death, the Durites retreated to the capital, and the 3 remaining lords sacrificed King Barbon upon the altar of Ishtanan in hopes of giving the Zehah Enomites lost hope, and in a last-ditch attempt for Ishtanan to hear their prayer. While Enom wept for the loss of Barbon, he still continued to take the capital of Dur and captured the 3 lords. Chapter 6. King Enom took the 3 lords and smote them, and cut them to pieces, and burnt their remains upon the altars of Ishtanan. Then he spat upon the altar, and smashed all the idols in Dur. Afterward, Enom went to parade him and his troops in the capital, in hopes that the Durites would embrace him back. To the shock and confusing dismay of Enom, the Durite giants were violent, and went full-on savage, and ate anyone they saw in their sight. Enom's men said to him, "These giants are beasts. Therefore let us wipe them to extinction, so that no man, woman, child, nor elder will fall victim to them." Enom wept at the suggestion, but gave in for the protection of the innocent in the future. Thus King Enom spent 3 months in Dur, and wiped out every giant into extinction. Only a minor number fled, and thus the identity of Dur was completely wiped out, and their land is now fully recognized as Zehah Enomite land. And this sent shockwaves throughout the world, leaving confusion to the allies, and sent discouragement to the enemies. After this came to pass, King Enom and his men wept at what they had to do, leaving no choice for them around it, as the giants went full-on savage. And thus the world was safe from the man-eating giants. Chapter 7. Enom's campaign continued south in Zalmon, where King Zekiah the Zetuite was stationed, and he called for backup from the Ishamites, but none came, for the Ishamites feared Zehah Enom greatly. Zehah Enom besieged their island 2 months, and they surrendered, with King Zekiah turning himself over for the lives of his people to be spared. And Enom honored his wish, and took him captive, and departed for Isham. But as they left, the Zalmonites rebelled once more under the leadership of Zekiah's captain of the host, Zad. Zad led 13,000 men to smite Enom and his forces in the field of Tanan, and the Zalmonites lost, with only 3,000 fleeing back to Zalmon. King Enom had his men turn around, and they besieged Zalmon 1 month, with the Zalmonite men begging Zad to end the siege by turning himself in. In response, Zad had them sacrificed to Ishtanan. After 1 month, the Zehah Enomite forces broke into Zalmon and pillaged the whole island, and smote Zad, and tore down their idols. Thus Zalmon fell to the Zehah Enomites by force. Upon learning this, Zekiah the king broke down and wept at what Zad his close friend had done, and regretted being his friend. Enom then turned north and fought at the recently reclaimed Ishamite border, where Enom clashed against 9,000 Ishamite men. King Ishkar-Ava fought at every battle where King Enom fought, for he was desirous to avenge his king Ishram's death, believing that King Enom was the one who killed him in secret, and he hated him with a passion and made it his life goal and made it his motivation. Enom took the border back, and the Ishamites were pushed back. At the next battle, King Ishkar-Ava had an arrow shot into his left knee and fought valiantly. Later on in the same battle, he saw General Jazer fighting in battle, and he wounded him and held him hostage. Once he locked eyes with Enom across the battle, he made sure Enom watched him slice the throat of General Jazer, which drove Enom wanting to avenge his father-in-law's death. The battle ended up being another Zeha-Enomite victory, but yet again, King Ishkar-Ava fled. Jazer's body was left on the battlefield, and it was brought before General Zaradin, his son, and he wept over his father's body and wanted to also slay King Ishkar-Ava. Chapter 8. Isham conquered previous Durite land to the west as King Enom fought to the south, where King Ishkar-Ava was driven by the goal to end King Enom. So much so that he laid an attack at King Enom's camp to slay him, but found him not, and the camp was rigged with explosions and it blew up, taking out almost all of Ishkar-Ova's men. And the explosion took out Ishkar-Ova's left leg and right arm, leaving him permanently wounded. Enom's men stormed into the camp after the explosion and slew all of the Ishamite men and took Ishkar-Ava alive and treated him and interrogated him. Zaradin begged Enom to slay him, but he stayed his hand. Enom himself went alone and questioned Ishkar-Ava and said to him, "What makes you think that I slew thine king? I loved him as a son. Never in a million years would I have thought to slay my son." Ishkar-Ava said to him in response, "He is not your son. You killed him to take our land, thou son of a terrorist." Enom asked him, "Terrorist?" In response, Ishkar-Ava spat toward his feet, and Enom got serious with him and said, "Ishram took his own life, for he wanted to take a married woman to wife. That's what started this all. And had I taken his life, you would have been in the right. But your perspective on the situation led you to the wrong response. Besides that you took the life of my father-in-law before my very eyes. I sought to slay thee, but I will stay my hand. But thou will be executed by the hand of my brother-in-law before my men. Before that happens, is there any final will or last words you wish to speak?" Ishkar-Ava said in response, "Write this down. I want all taken land to be under the governance of the previous king who are still alive. I even want to go down in history as the man who almost stopped you in battle, as your scar on your left cheek is the proof for it. I have put up a good fight, but lost in the end, for Ishtanan did not favor me, but he favored thee. Let my son govern Isham in my stead. I will write a letter to the rest of Isham to surrender to thee, and thou shalt send my head to them as proof of your dominion over them. Forgive me, for I now know that you are truly Arthan's chosen, and that you were not behind the death of Ishram, but that it was a suicide. I want my people to know that I am sorry for deceiving them with my belief toward thee. I should have learned from the past mistakes of those who have crossed your path in the past, and have failed against thee. Take my crown from me, to establish thine dominion over Isham, thy brethren root of Zeha. To the Ishamites, please surrender the whole land of Isham, and let no more suffer for my sins." After this was written, Ishkar-Ava was presented in the center of the camp of the Zeha-Enomite forces, and General Zaradin smote off his head with an axe and had a messenger bring the head and Ishkar-Ava's final message brought forth to the capital of Isham, and the entire kingdom surrendered, and Enom had Ishkar-Ava's son, Uzzah ben Ava, crowned as king and appointed governor over Isham. Chapter 9. Upon learning this, Kuk and Sheleg were sorely afraid, and both kingdoms sued for peace. Thus the civil war had ended with Zeha-Enom recovering most of their lost territory, besides the Slime Dominion and the land of Enom. King Enom was paraded as a hero in the streets of Kezia, while dragging King Zekiah and King Benaiah in chains, and the crowd booed them and casted food at them. Afterward, General Jazer was honored and buried in the land of Zeha, and Zaradin was appointed in the stead of his father, and King Zekiah and King Benaiah were appointed as governors and kings over their own provinces as their reward, for Enom forgave them both for their crimes against the empire. All kingdoms paid tribute in the empire as punishment, and Enom was feared above Flammis. When the war started, King Enom was 32 years old, and the war lasted for 2 years, and Enom returned to Kezia victorious at the age of 34 years of age. Enom was highly praised for his countless victories. Songs were made of him, and plays were put on of his life story, and the touching life story of his parents which proved Enom's legitimacy on the throne. Chapter 10. As King Enom sat on his throne, a messenger presented himself before him, and said to him, "I come here to bring some news, Emperor Enom. As you know, King Draken was turned into the Ender Dragon, and he needs your help freeing him from his curse." He furthermore said, "In my hands is the location of his sword, which Draken hid before he went to the end." King Enom went on the mountain across the river at the border of Dur, where he went deep into the mountain and found King Draken's lost netherite sword. He took it and kept it with him for future use. And he told it to others, and they spread the words and pointed back to some future prophecy involving Drakon himself. Then an organization was formed between Shelag and Cook, known as the Children of Flammis, as they worshipped him as their god. And a messenger came and presented himself before Enom, and he gave him a letter, and this is what it contained. To King Enom, "We are an organization known as the Children of Flammis, and we are dismayed that you have taken out King Flammis. Therefore we will not rest until you die. Your death has already been sealed, so don't try to beg for mercy." Enom scoffed at the Children of Flammis, surprised that they are stupid enough to go against him, despite what Enom has proven during the recent civil war. And the messenger said to Enom, "Enom, the time has come for you to fight the Ender Dragon and free Drakon of his curse. You are the prophesied one, Enom." Enom assumed he said that based on the events with Arthun. The messenger then told Enom to go get blaze rods and to make Eyes of Ender to activate the Ender portal, where Drakon is. Enom did so, and he brought some men with him. Afterward he made the rods into the Eyes of Ender, then found the portal. He entered there with his men, and they fought against the Ender Dragon. They first took out all the crystals to prevent the dragon from healing, then they continued their fight against the dragon. When the dragon was wounded enough, Enom went and smote the dragon with Draken's own sword, and the Ender Dragon was defeated. Afterward, Enom collected the Ender Dragon egg. Then the dragon turned into a figure, and the figure said to him, "Thank you for freeing me, Enom." Enom was surprised and said to him, "You must be Draken." He confirmed this by saying, "Yes, I am, and because of you, I may finally go into the afterlife." Enom said, while downcast, "You can't go. You're free now, even though you are the last of the original 3 kings." Draken said in response, "That may be true, but my body was the dragon, and it decayed. So now I may go to the afterlife." Enom asked about the Ender Dragon egg, and Draken said in response, "You may keep it as your reward, Enom." Enom then asked if the dragon egg was his child, and Draken said, "No, but before I go, I must tell you that there is another world on this planet." Enom was confused and asked about it, and Draken responded saying, "King Flammis hid it from you, but the world in question has a lot more opportunities with Arthanus," referring to the name of the world, not the king. Enom had so many questions, and Draken responded by saying, "You'll have to see for yourself. As for me, I am going to the afterlife, and you may keep my sword." After saying his final words, Draken ascended up into the void in the end into the afterlife, and Enom wept at his departure, and thought non-stop of the supposed new world he spoke of. After this came to pass, Enom's men were at awe, and they saw that the prophecies all came to pass with Enom, and they started worshipping Enom, and Enom said to them, "Do no such thing." They afterward went into the portal to transport back to the surface world, and they were paraded once again in Kezia, and everything was told to all of the empire, and the enemies even heard of the event. And everyone knew that Enom had fulfilled all of the prophecies concerning Flammis and Draken, and they now saw him as the chosen one. Some saw him as equal to Arthun, and others saw him as his pupil. Arthun told Enom that he saw everything unfold in the end, and said to him, "I am proud of you, Enom. With the freeing of Drakon, the world may finally rest for now, until the prophecy of the Children of Flammis comes to play." He furthermore said to Enom, "It was said that the Children of Flammis would try to take over all of Ortuna, but for now, it's time to rest." Enom then asked, "When will the prophecy be?" Arthun told him, "Very soon." With the freeing of King Draken, a new revelation of a new world has come into play, and with it comes new opportunities and the eventual return of Father Flammis and the Children of Flammis. Chapter 11. King Ashish's captain of the host was Ichabod, a faithful childhood friend of Ashish himself, and the son of a servant to Ekan, Ashish's late father. They shared the hatred toward Enom together, for Enom had also slain his father the servant in the days of his banditry. Prince Asher was 12 and played with all of his siblings, but his brothers, Zakiah and Zekiah, were mean toward him, but eventually pranked them in revenge. And his sisters, Lydia and Amal, often would dress up their brother Zeth in their clothes for fun. Asher was competitive and played sports with his brothers, and they were agile and impressed some girls. King Enon traveled from Toi to Mount Kezia for a feast with his son, Prince Ram, chief Araphat of Azah, and his son's wife and the daughter of Araphat, Amy. They came and announced the pregnancy of Princess Amy, and they celebrated the occasion, and it bored Asher and his brothers, and they were kids. They played with the children of the guests, and they were friends. And the sons of Enom were handsome in appearance. And these were the children that Amy bore Prince Ram of Hud, Prince Nauz, Prince Joram, and Princess Kath. King Tuolak and Queen Uma even had children, a son named Prince Olak and Princess Asma. And King Ashish of Shaleg took Asma to wife when she was merely a girl, and he committed evil with her against her will, for she was given to him too young for the sake of alliance with Shaleg. And the kingdom of Shaleg at this point renamed itself to the Kingdom of Selig. And Asma bore King Ashish a son named Saif, and they continued to organize the children of Flammis. A few members of the children of Flammis had laid attempts upon the royal family and were locked up and questioned. Every attempt at questioning them failed due to them either taking their own life or cutting their own tongue out to not be able to tell them anything. One even tried to take the life of Ashar and his brothers, and Zaradin smote him in half before their eyes. The princes and the princesses were under surveillance during this time period, and they followed them everywhere they went or traveled to, for diplomacy. And Enom taught his sons how to ride the Tannins when Zaradin came and said to the king, "An army of the children of Flammis lay in attempt to besiege the city." Enom went and saw them from the wall, and prepared for the attempt by the enemy to siege Mount Kezia. And the enemy besieged for 42 days, when the Ishmaelites and the Tannanites came from behind and fought the children of Flammis, and slew 15,000 of them. And they were disgusted at their cult-like nature, being mindless and blind to who they follow, while covering themselves in dark cloaks. Enom saw them as an abomination, and decreed that every one of them shall be put to the sword, as they are irredeemable, based on previous attempts, according to what the king had stated. More attempts to take Zehah were laid, and were all in vain to the frustration of Cook and Selig, while the empire knew not that they were behind the children of Flammis. King Enom prayed for a victory, and it was granted. Out of nowhere, a stampede of wild Tannins stormed out of the woods and trodden upon the army of the children of Flammis, and they died. Some among them did survive, and reported the thing back to the kingdoms of Selig and Cook, and they were kindled against them, that they slew them. One member of the children of Flammis did snap out of it, and no longer wanted any part of the organization, and he begged for mercy and turned himself in. This shocked Enom, for he thought that none were redeemable, and he granted the deserted member's wish and took him captive. He took him to a chamber alone, where Enom interrogated him, and said to him, "Answer me these questions, and thou shalt live, and be free to live a new life here. Who sent thee?" The captive member answered, "The kingdoms of Selig and Cook have sent us, for they formed the children of Flammis." Enom was surprised and asked another question. "What is their goal with this organization?" He answered him, "To slay thee and wipe out the existence of the Zehah Enomite Empire and its influence over the land of Ortuna." Enom then asked, "When will they launch their next assault?" He answered, "Next month, based on what I heard at their camp, if this assault were ever to fail." Enom also asked, "Where do they plan to launch the attack at?" The captive answered him, "The kingdom of Hud." Enom was curious why they would shift their attention toward Hud, and asked, "Why do they plan to turn their attention toward Hud, our ally?" He answered him, "They believe that if they attacked Hud without it being known, it would take thee by surprise, and that ye would come to aid them." Enom asked once more, "How do they plan to attack Hud?" He answered him once more, "They plan to sail northward and travel around the coastal nations in the wilderness, and travel to the north of Hud and attack downward, for no man lives north of them. They even have plotted to slay the entire royal family of Hud there. This revelation made Enom determined to protect his friend and mentor and his family at all costs, and he stood and swore, saying, "As I live, so shall Enan live. As long as I live, I shall protect the royal family of Hud with all the fight I have in me, and the children of Flammus will die out, whether in my lifetime or not." Enom then released the man and let him live freely in Zeha-Enam, a changed man. And Enam sent messengers to Hud about the oncoming attack, and they prepared themselves. Even Zeha-Enam armed themselves to travel there to defend Hud. Selig and Kuk knew not that their plans were exposed to their enemies. Chapter 12. When the month had expired, the Zeha-Enomites secretly sailed along the western coastline, up toward Hud, and met up with King Enan's men there. King Enom greeted his father-in-law and Prince Ram, who were far off from the battle at a viewing distance as their men encamped in Hud. King Enon turned and said to his son-in-law, "The time to defend is here. Let us go up and defend the land of Hud." They marched to their northern border and waited for the children of Flammus to arrive. Sometime later, the children of Flammus arrived at the northern border and were taken by surprise to see the Zeha-Enomites and the Hudites already waiting at the border for them. They were afraid and said to one another, "How do they know we would be here? No turning back, we must fight." They clashed at the border and began to push the children of Flammus back, with them losing the battle by far. Then one member of the children of Flammus came off to the side away from view, and he had a clear view of the two kings and the prince in sight. He drew his arrow back and released, and the arrow smote into King Enan's head, and he instantly died. Prince Ram wept and held on to his father, as Enom immediately turned and saw who shot Enan. Enom turned back to Enan upon seeing Enan dead. His life flashed before his eyes and remembered the strong friendship he had with him. Enom wept. Then his weep turned to fury, and he went down and pursued him hard with determination to slay him. He eventually does catch him, for he jumped at him and pinned him to the ground alone in the woods. He took Draken's sword and hacked the member dead repeatedly long after the member was dead. As Enom hacked the member into pieces, he wept bitterly in a blind rage, for the man who he saw as his mentor was dead. When Enom ceased his rage, he dropped Draken's blade and wept there for a while. Afterward, he cut off the head of the member and brought it to Ram. After the battle, Avital and Shoshana came over to mourn with their brother, and they buried their father in Tay in the land of Hud after the battle was won. Ram was then crowned king of Hud and reigned in the stead of his father in the 14th year of the reign of King Enom over Zeha-Enam. Enom honored King Enan, his mentor, and he spoke kindly of him, saying, "When I fled into the land of Hud at the age of 10 from Akash the tyrant, I was raised under Enan, who was chief of Hud in those days. He loved me as a father, and I loved him as his son. I became his assassin to take out competitors for chieftainhood. His 2 daughters love me. I will miss my mentor and my father." The people were moved much as they honored him to the level of Arthun, and all listened without complaint due to his influence. Thus all of the land of Ortuna that did care wept for the loss of Enom's mentor. They then did see Enom weep in front of them, and they were moved and admired him much. From that day forward they called Enom the Great. Chapter 13. Prince Ashar was the favorite son of Enom, the apple of his eye, and the one who he intended to be placed on the throne after his death. Ashar and his other children were grown, and Ashar was 30 years old by this point. King Enom had reigned for 32 years and was 52 years old. Prince Ashur, however, was a playboy, slothful, and uncaring of his duty and heir to the Zeha-Enomite Empire. His next brother, Prince Zabias, was jealous over his brother and secretly worshipped Ishtanen, being a secret friend to someone from the children of Flammus. Prince Zabias practiced evil according to his desire, and adored King Ashish's wife, Asma, and wanted to have secret relations with her. He one day decided to secretly disguise himself as one of the Seligites and rode himself north to the kingdom of Selig at night and took a walk in Selig Point. And no one in Zeha-Enam knew he was in the kingdom of Selig. He met a beautiful woman who appeared to be around her age in a harlot veil, just sitting out in the open as people passed by her, giving her no attention. Prince Zabias was immediately smitten in love. He came up to her and said to her, "I pray thee, let me come into thee. Thou art fair to look upon." She answered him, "What will you give me in return?" Zabias offered her, "I have a bag full of coins." Upon the mention of coins, the woman's eyes lit up and found the man to be pleasing. She took him into a room in an abandoned home, and Zabias came in unto her. Afterward he asked her, You please me well, thou art beautiful. I pray thee, tell me who thou art. She answered him, You first. Zabias gave in and answered, I charge thee to tell no one my identity. I am Prince Zabias, son of King Enom of the Enomite Empire, though I am jealous over the throne as I am his second eldest son. Upon hearing his words her heart sank. She revealed her true identity, saying, I am Queen Asma of Selig. I played the harlot because my husband did not fulfill my pleasure to lay with him, so I sought another to lay with. I thank thee that thou hast fulfilled my desire. Prince Zabias was head over heels over the revelation, and said to her, I won't tell a soul, thou art the most beautiful queen that I have ever laid my eyes upon. I pray thee, let us have an affair with one another. I will give thee the coins I had promised. I will come by each time with a new set of coins to give thee, for I love thee. This surprised and relieved Asma, for she surely thought that he was going to report the thing to his father, but saw that he's too smitten by her. Prince Zabias then departed and came back from time to time to lay with Asma. Asma conceived from this affair and bore Zabias one son, who she named Selig, named after the kingdom of Selig. Asma made her husband the king, believed that he was the father of the child, and it worked, with King Ashish believing that Selig was his. One day Zabias came into the palace to see Selig and Asma, and King Ashish hid and watched from around a corner, and noticed that the child looked a lot like the man, and he was kindled, believing that his own wife cheated on him with that man who she is talking to. He came out in fury and shouted, Thou harlot! You lied to me. The child isn't mine but his. Thou both, including the child, shall die. Asma cut in and quickly said out of desperation for her life to be spared, This man is the son of King Enom, our enemy. The king stopped in his tracks and drew out his sword from his sheath and slowly walked toward Zabias with it. When he was close enough, the side of the blade touched Zabias's neck, as he stood there standing his ground before the king of Selig. Zabias then said to the king, I despise my father, and am jealous of the throne. I'm friends with a member of the children of Flammis, and I worship Ishtanan in secret. Upon hearing his words, King Ashish pulled his sword back and put it in his sheath. He then embraced Zabias and said to him, If you serve me, I shall gain the throne of Zeha and give it to thee. Asma was relieved upon her husband sparing Zabias, her lover. From that day forth, Zabias secretly worked under the children of Flammis, and King Tuolak knew it. Zabias lived as normal in Zeha Enom, and they knew not. One night Zabias suggested to Ashar, his brother, Let us party and be merry. Let us also watch the fair daughters of Joaz dance before us. Ashar was pleased at the suggestion, for he thought it was time for him to take a wife. They went down from the palace to Lushful Bay, where many of the fair daughters of Joaz were dancing before Zehalite men who watched on. They partied there, and all men were merry with strong drink till nightfall. Prince Ashur was merry with wine, when Prince Zabias, his brother, equipped a dagger and struck his brother around into his chest from behind, and he died there. Zabias then fled, and the matter was reported to King Enom. Upon hearing the report, Enom rented his garment and wept over the death of his eldest and favorite son. When he ceased to weep, he said to Zaradin, his general, Go seek and fetch my next son and bring him here, for I shall question him. Zaradin went to fetch Zabias, who he found trying to flee on a rowboat alone to escape the empire. Zaradin easily snatched him and brought him before Enom, who stood from his throne and questioned him, Why have you done such a wicked act, my son? Zabias wept in regret and answered him, I have sinned against thee, father. I worked for the children of Flammis, as they had promised me the throne of Zeha, and I had secret relations with Queen Asma of Selig, and she bore me a son who she named Selig. This revelation took Enom by surprise, and he wept and left the room to process everything. He eventually made a decision and returned. He said to Zabias, My son, you have killed Ashar, my heir. Therefore thou shalt die, and not gain the throne. Zaradin dragged Zabias away, who begged his father to spare him, but he would not give in. Enom wept for the loss of 2 sons. Zesh later listed the crimes of Zabias before the children of Zeha, and he beheaded him on Mount Casia, and he was buried there, including Ashar. Prince Ashar was 30 and 1 years old upon his death, and Prince Zabias was 30 years old upon his execution. All of the empire wept over the loss, including the allies of the empire. King Ram sent his condolences to his brother-in-law, who went to comfort him. Manasseh, his advisor, came up to Enom and said to him, "Who will you now set as your new heir, my king?" Queen Zobia overheard and came in to answer Manasseh, "We still yet have one son together, Zeth, our youngest and the last of the bloodline of Joaz himself." Upon remembering this, Enom's favor fell upon his youngest son, and set him up as his heir, and he was now the apple of his eye. Chapter 14. Upon learning of Zabias' death and Enom knowing his involvement with the organization, King Ashish's heart sank, and he gave up the ghost and died on the spot. His son Saif then reigned as king in his stead. King Saif was young and inexperienced, and Ichabod, his father's friend, took advantage of this. King Ashish reigned for 30 years, and Saif reigned as king after him in Selig. Ichabod then secretly smote Saif, that he died, and Ichabod usurped his throne and became king of Selig. Saif reigned for 1 year in Selig, and Ichabod reigned in his stead. Ichabod sent gifts unto the king of Kuk, and he was his friend and confidant. King Tuolak vowed vengeance upon King Enom and Zeha-Enom for King Ashish's death, and sought to war him. King Tuolak sent messengers to King Enom, saying, "Behold, a chosen one of Arthan, I fear thee not. We shall storm by sea as the sea serpent, and shall shatter your vain empire. For thou shalt be delivered into our hands by the might of our god, Ishtanan, for revenge against thee for smashing his altars and his idols." Now, Queen Uma secretly wanted her husband to perish in battle in revenge for all the abuse he's done toward her, even his cheating habits. By this point, Queen Uma was in a secret affair with Tuolak's brother, Koam, for she prefers him upon the throne instead of her husband, as Koam was love-struck for her, unlike Tuolak. King Tuolak sailed down to the northern coasts of the Zeha-Enomite Empire. Meanwhile, he was sacrificing unto Ishtanan for a deliverance, while Enom himself prayed for a deliverance. And Enom's prayer was answered. Now, King Tuolak knew of Ishkar-Ava being close to taking the life of Enom. Therefore, he adopted his tactics to attempt the same in hopes of succeeding where Ishkar-Ava failed. They clashed on the coast, and Tuolak fought his way to get close to Enom. But Enom saw him from behind. He therefore leapt off his tannin-pulled chariot and charged through the Kukite enemies. He leapt up and strike down on Tuolak's back. His spear pierced through his back into his heart, and he fell dead. Thus the evil reign of Tuolak ended by death in the battlefield, for he was delivered into the hands of Enom himself. All of the Kukites fell in battle. Not one remained, and the rest back on the slime island were humbled and were terrified of Enom. Queen Uma then married Koam and set him up as king, and he reigned in his stead. King Tuolak reigned for 30 years on the slime island in the kingdom of Kuk, not counting Zalmon, and his brother reigned in his stead. Now, when Koam reigned for 3 months, his nephew Prince Olak, the son of Tuolak, felt betrayed, and he gathered a following of their country, and overthrew King Koam, his uncle, and beheaded him, and took the throne for his own. Once he learned that his mother had plotted for Koam to be on the throne, he took his mother, bound her with a chain unto a boulder, and pushed the boulder into the sea, where his mother drowned, dying as a broken woman. King Ram then gave his daughter, Princess Kath, to Prince Zeth of Zeha-Enom to wife, while King Uza-ben-Alva of Isham took Princess Lydia, daughter of King Enom, to wife. Chapter 15. In time, Prince Zeth went in unto his wife, and she bore him 4 sons, and these were their names, Asun, Tela, Kish, and Jumah. Before Zeth married and had begotten 4 sons, his brothers and sisters married before him, and each had begotten children. These were the sons of Zekiah, Jorab, Honeah, Azariah, Zuar, and Ushbel. These were the sons of Zekiah, Quail, Yomel, and Yut. This was the son of Tela, Jakub. These were the sons of Selah, Xavier, Boda, Zan, Zed, Phelan, and Okran. These were Uel's sons, Gael, Doran, Bera, and Caleb. These were Zoran's sons, Ma, Mash, Dud, and Jozan. And these were the sons of Nahath, Nash, Ham, Jokul, Katuk, Ishul, Boram, Atan, Lish, and Ren. And these were the sons that Lydia bore to King Uzzah ben Ava of Isham, Ish ben Uzzah, Avaram, and Yom Ish. Amal was then given to Joz, the son of Zesh, Enom's soldier, to wife, and these were the sons she bore her husband, Ammon and Joel. And King Enom had 42 grandsons in all, including Selig of the house of Ashish. And it came to pass when King Enom was 70, King Ichabod sent another wave of raids on the coastlines by the children of Flammis. In these days the influence of the children of Flammis began to spread. King Enom himself went with his sons, where he began to wax weak in battle. A child of Flammis was about to strike from behind, when Ashan, a Zehah Enomite soldier, slew him and said to his king, "You are old and no longer in the flower of your age to fight. I pray thee, return home and fight no more with us." Therefore Enom retired to his palace and governed. And it came to pass when Zobeah, his queen, died, that all of the empire wept for her, as she was among the fair daughters of Joaz. And Enom buried her on Mount Keziah with her family, for she was a king's daughter. Then King Umalak of Kuk died, and his son, ben Kuk, reigned in his stead over the kingdom of Kuk. He sent secret letters to King Enom, as he himself obtained the book of Enom's life, and was himself touched. From the letters he sent to Enom, they became friends, and he gave him the insights into the organization as a secret ally. King ben Kuk secretly despised the children of Flammis, and no longer wanted to rule nor assist them, but he could not, for he was afraid that he would die if he did. Enom blessed him, saying, "Blessed be you, for you yourself do not practice wickedness and find disgust toward the children of Flammis. May they perish. I pray thee, abandon Ishtanan and Flammis, and turn to Arthan." King ben Kuk did so and admired Enom, and Enom was like a mentor to him. Selig also contacted his grandfather and abandoned Ishtanan and Flammis, and he moved to Mount Keziah, for Ichabod would have found him as competition to the throne and would have slain him. Once he arrived, Enom embraced him and called him, "My grandson, thou art found, thou lost sheep of mine." Chapter 16. Prior to Zeth's marriage to Kath, this was his story. Prince Zeth was heir to the throne, and he went on a stroll to go down to Lushful Bay to see if any of the fair daughters of Joaz pleased him, and none did, and he returned. He said to his father, "I pray thee, find me a wife, for none of the fair daughters of Joaz please me." Enom then went to go looking with Manasseh, his adviser and brother-in-law. They went to Zalmon and Tanan to seek, but found none. They even went to Isham, Zatu, Azah, and Arah, but found none. They even went to Hud, but found none either. Enom then remembered his brother-in-law, King Ram. He had an unwed daughter. He therefore turned to his son and suggested to him, "I pray thee, Zeth, let us go up to see the king of Hud's daughter, to see if she pleases thee." Zeth gave in, and they went up to the kingdom of Hud and presented themselves before King Ram. All lusted after Princess Kath, daughter of King Ram. For in these days people's minds and hearts began to stray away from Enom and Arthun. Enom said to the king of Hud, "I pray thee, if it seemeth good in thy sight, let my son take the hand of your daughter into marriage." King Ram granted it, and they were betrothed. Prince Zeth saw her, and he was pleased with her, and they were wedded. After they were married, many Hudites were wroth, and they tried to break in to force themselves upon Princess Kath. They were evacuated, and the Hudite guards slew many wicked Hudite men. Prince Zeth and Princess Kath then went to Zehah-Enam in Mount Keziah to live there in security, for Princess Kath was fair. Prince Zachiah and Prince Uel even one attempted to cheat on their wives to have an affair with Kath. But this was exposed, and they were humiliated, and they repented and returned to their wives and children. Men then began to say, "Are the fairness of the daughters of Joaz beginning to fade away?" Ichabod then died, and his son, Korah, reigned in his stead. King Ram of Hud also died, and his son, Noz, reigned in his stead. King Noz went down and said to the 80-year-old king of Zehah-Enom, "Thou hast been good and faithful toward my grandfather. Now I ask of thee, let me and thine son, Zeth, go up to conquer the children of Flammis for good." Enom rejected by saying, "You shall not go up, for the children of Flammis are too strong for thee. You may try, but I beg thee not to, as you might die." Noaz hearkened unto the counsel of Enom, and he went not up to fight that evil organization. In these days, the influence of the children of Flammis was growing so great that the northern half of the land of Ortuna hearkened and followed Flammis. Upon Enom learning this, he wept. Chapter 17. This account was written by King Enom of Zeha-Enom. King Arthan commanded me to write this along with another. Here is the story. I had thus far reigned for a long time, and am now 97 years old, with my hair as white as snow. My beard is down to my chest, and I lack the strength to fight. An ambassador from Ortuna came and said to me, Come, King Arthan has one command left for you to perform before you go the way of all man. He assisted me to the shore, and a flying giant sea scorpion took I and him up unto it, with a spinning bubble. It lifted us up to it, and it took us to the dominion of Ortuna under the land. The ambassador further assisted me by walking me to the throne room, for I am old and weak. I saw Arthan on his throne, and said to the ambassador who assisted me, I pray thee, help me bow down with my face toward the floor. He helped me, and my face was toward the floor, bowing down to Arthan. He came down from his throne upon the tall base, and he said to the ambassador, You may take your leave, I shall take it from here. The ambassador departed, and Arthan lifted me up from bowing on the floor, and he said to me, I have one more task for thee, but I shall show you something first, something worth seeing before you die. I answered him, Take me, I am thine servant. To my surprise, Arthan said in response, You are more than that, for thou art my friend. I dropped tears on his shiny floor, and he took me, and we departed from the throne room. He took me to a giant flying sea scorpion. The spinning bubble carried us both up unto it, and Arthan commanded everyone on it, saying, Everyone must depart from here, for I should be alone as what I shall tell to Enom, shall no man know till the time appointed. Everyone on there departed, and it was just him and I on board, and he took control of it and caused it to lift us up into the heavens. He took us both very high up, and saw the sky turn from blue into black before my eyes. He took us high up till we were able to see the stars, and when I looked down, the land was a giant cube and vast, and all the continents were small and many. The last was more vast than I thought, and Arthan pointed to a particular land a little ways away from the land of Arthunis. He said to me, After your death, a son of yours shall rule the land, and he shall set thine body out, and we shall take it, and put thee in a tomb in our crypts within Ortuna's capital with Draken's sword. And he furthermore said to me, The land which I pointed out is the land which Flammis hid, and it shall be where all mankind shall be banished, for a great evil shall fill on the land and defile the land. Even the children of Flammis is that evil which I speak of. The land is called Artunis. We shall take it back, and it shall be once more the domain of Arthunis, with us now living upon the surface. But mankind shall not enter it, lest they die. It shall not be until the end times, when the righteous shall enter it again. I asked him, When shall this be? He answered me, Not long after your son sits on the throne. My heart sank, as I saw that my homeland was more beautiful than the wasteland that mankind shall be banished toward for their sins. Arthan then said to me, Zekiah, thine grandfather said that your descendants would grow as numerous as these stars, did he not? I replied, Yea, he did, and he never told me who sent him before he died. Arthan finally answered who sent my grandfather, saying, Zornan, the god of life, had sent him. And I asked, Who is that? Arthan told me everything about him, but I won't write it here. But you can find a book about Zornan in a book titled The Book of Zornan. I was marveled upon learning about Zornan and the great knowledge of Arthan. Arthan further said to me, Your descendants shall be divided into 8 tribes. The tribe shall be the each of thine living sons. The tribe of Zakiah, the tribe of Zek, Zekiah, the tribe of Uol, the tribe of Tela, the tribe of Sela, Saleh, the tribe of Zoran, the tribe of Nahath, and the tribe of Zeth. Each descendant from these tribes shall be identified with these tribes, while also being identified as an Enomite, their new national identity rather than a Zahilite. For the Zahilites shall be no more. For the Zahilites shall be wiped out with the wicked when we banish mankind into the hidden land. And no more shall there be the saying, The daughters of Joaz are the fairest in the land, for they wax weak and corrupt. But there shall be a new saying, The sons of Enom are mighty in the land. He further said, Fear not Enom, I shall lead your descendants to a beautiful land, and the land shall prosper with them. But beware, when they sin, they shall be led captive into the enemy's country, and their land shall not prosper. As the Enomites are the apple of my eye for thy sake, and they shall be disciplined. And they shall return to their homeland by a hero that I shall send them on that day. I fell down and wept, and he comforted me, and said, I know it is hard, but it must come to pass for my future plan. I wiped my tears and asked, Future plan? He said to me, You are here for 2 reasons. One is to let everyone know about this conversation and write it on a scroll and publish it. The second reason, thou shalt write another scroll, and it shall be sealed shut up with me. For what I shall tell thee shall no man know of, till the appointed time concerning my future plan coming to pass, and you shall die telling no man the thing. Arthun told me everything, and my heart sank, and I wondered marvelously over it, and it gave me joyness and gladness in my heart. I wrote it down and sealed it, and handed it over to Arthun. He said to me, I shall reveal this to mankind in the future, but for now I shall send thee home, and thou shalt die in peace, and no one alive after you shall compare to thee, as they would not come close. Go, write the rest down, and let everyone know. Perhaps they'll listen, and shall not be sent from their homeland soon. But if they are not willing to heed to my warning, the most wicked of them all shall die, and the rest of mankind shall be banished to the hidden land, and shall not be able to come into the land of Arthunus again. After these words, Arthun sent me home, and I wrote them down, and published them throughout not only Enom, but internationally throughout the known countries in the land of Ortuna. Thus plenty heeded the warning of Arthun through the books, but most heeded not unto the warning of Arthun. Chapter 18. Now behold, King Enom was 100 years old and on his deathbed. He called his sons to his bedside, Selig his grandson, King Naus, King Uza-ben-Ava, King Ben-Kuk, who managed to be secretly here, Chief Fahid of Azah, Chief Dion of Ara, and Chief Ishtah, the son of Emrah, the brother of Zini, Enom's wife. All were there for attendance, including the chief of Arshavir, and he said to them, Blessed be ye, for ye have all hearkened unto Arthun's cry, and shall therefore be escorted safely into the land of Artunis after my death, though I don't know how long after. But the influence of the children of Flammis is growing too great, and the land itself is crying out from it being defiled by them. For no one is more wicked than they. Not even the shortly lived kingdom of Azar could be compared to them. You all shall multiply into tribes and nations. Enom's eyes were dim, and he could not see well, but he turned to his sons, starting with his eldest to youngest sons. Zekiah, my son, you shall be remembered, and shall increase in multitude, thou father of the tribe of Zekiah. He turned to Zekiah and said to him, Thou wert named after my own grandfather, yet you are strengthened and shall multiply like thine brother, thou father of the tribe of Zek. He turned to Zoran and said to him, You are the dawn that shines bright, a torch to guide the way. Thou shalt multiply like thine brothers, thou father of the tribe of Zoran. He then turned to Uel and said, Thou desirest to seek out God, and shall continue to desire it all thine days. Thou shalt multiply, just as thine brothers, thou father of the tribe of Uel. He again turned to Tela and said to him, Thou art strong and loyal, for thou art faithful and loving. Thou shalt indeed multiply, thou father of the tribe of Tela. And he turned to Selah and said to him, Thou art a rock, a cliff, a boulder whose foundation cannot be shaken. Multiply and be strong along the cliff of Selah, thou father of the tribe of Selah. He then again turned to Nahath and said to him, Thou art a leader, rest now, for thou shalt multiply, thou father of the tribe of Nahath. He finally turned to Zeth, his youngest and favorite son, and said to him, You are appointed to this position and placed there. Thou art a leader and a judge over Enom. Multiply greatly, thou father of the tribe of Zeth. Enom then turned his attention towards Selig, his grandson, and said to him, You are blessed, for you hearkened unto the warning, and shall live. Go and multiply, be the father of the nation of Sales. Then turned he to Naus, the king of Hud, and said to him, Thou wert quiet, timid, constrained, but thou hast gained courage and uttered. Thou art blessed, and shall indeed multiply among the other Hudites who also hearkened. He turned to King Uza-ben-Ava, and said to him, Thou son of a strong bird-like man, go forth and multiply amongst the other Ishmaelites who have hearkened unto the warning. He turned to Ben-Kuk and said, "A son of a nation that shouts, go forth and multiply with your faithful Kukites, who even hearkened unto the cry." Enom then turned to Chief Fahid and said, "You are a panther. Go and multiply with the rest of the Azahites, who also hearkened unto the cry." He even turned to Chief Dion and said, "Thou child of heaven, go forth and multiply with the other Arahites, who even hearkened unto the cry." And Enom turned to Chief Ishtah and said to him, "Thou ruler of a flat land, multiply thou amongst thine people, the Zetuites, for you all have hearkened unto the cry." He then called forth his 2 daughters, Lydia and Amal, even Kath, his daughter-in-law, even the wives of his sons and the chiefs, and he blessed them, saying, "Blessed be the mothers of these nations and tribes, for thou shalt birth them and give life unto these who shall be as multiple as the stars." When Enom was done, he charged everyone to leave except for his sons and daughters, and they departed his bedchamber in the palace. Hours later, Enom was dead. King Enom had given up the ghost and died before his children, and they mourned the death of their king and their father. Behold, King Enom was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 80 years, and died of a good old age at 100 years. They then took him and embalmed him. Then took he and Draken's sword, putting him in proper royal attire, and placed him on a stone-built platform at where Enom was first taken up, to go down into the kingdom of Ortuna. All of the children of Zehah and the daughters of Joaz followed after and mourned for their king, for there was no man like him, and his death hurt them. They laid him on the stone without the crown, and placed Draken's sword on his torso, facing the point toward his feet, and set his hands to grab onto the handle of the blade, and he laid there, looking peaceful, as everyone was, a ways away to pay their respects toward him. A while later, night covered the sky, and everyone remained there. And suddenly, a giant flying sea scorpion came and levitated over where Enom's body laid. And it frightened all the people, and they said, "We're gonna die, for surely they've come to judge us." A beam of blue light then shot down from underneath the giant flying sea scorpion and levitated Enom's body and sword upward into it. And the people were left in awe upon seeing that. Arthur afterward then descended down from the same blue beam till his feet touched the ground. He stood before the children of Zehah and all the others there, and he was taller than any other there. A man would be to his chest. Arthur was intimidating to look upon. His clothing was like no other, clean, and his crown was blue, and his eyes were blue as diamonds. Arthur spoke up with the voice of authority, and said to all who were there, "Let this be a time of mourning, for Enom, your leader, who has served you for 80 years, has passed on. But he shall not go forgotten, as his words and stories are written down and are with you. Be not afraid of me, for I am Father Arthun, the son of King Arthonis, from the great battle. My friend Enom had power and delivered you from your enemies all the time. I now say to you, from now on, remain faithful and hearken unto my warning and my cry, and thou shalt be delivered safely into a new land, that thou shalt be safe and multiply in. For the children of Flammus shall for a time have dominion over this land, and soon I will rise up to cleanse this land of all evil, and none shall return till the time appointed. Follow and listen with faith, peace to all." Arthur then levitated up the same beam into the flying giant sea scorpion, and it took off into the night sky to return into the ocean. Upon seeing the flying structure taking off with Arthur, they all were sore afraid, and rented their garments, and some wept, while others were in great shock. They said to one another, "We have seen Father Arthur, the one who Enom hath seen. Enom has told us the truth all his life." Zeth then came forth and said to all who were there, "Fear not, Arthur shall spare thee if thou all hearken unto his warning. For he shall cleanse this land of all evil and corruption, including the children of Flammus, once they have dominion of all the land. In that day they shall lead us to the land of Artunis, the land which had been hidden by Flammus in the days of old. For the time being, follow me, for I am the king's son and heir." They mourned for 7 days and crowned Zeth as their new king. Zeth was 68 years old when he began to reign over the Zehah Enomite Empire. King Enom was born in the year 980 after extinction and died in the year 1080 after extinction. Chapter 19. When Zeth began to sit on the throne, he picked up from where his father had left off. All of Enom's wives and his siblings-in-laws were dead, and Tela, Asun's brother, was the new general. He fought with Asun, his brother. They once scouted the land of Zehah and saw a group of Zehalites who joined the children of Flammis, worshipped in the woods of Sin, and sacrificed Tanins and children upon the rebuilt altar of Ish-Tanin, and they reported the matter to King Zeth, their father. He said to them, "Go down and slay them." Asun and Tela went up to the island of Sin and took with them 20 Zehalite fighting men, as the children of Flammis, who were not many. They charged in and slew all who wore a dark cloak in the woods, slaying all of the members there. News spread of it, and the Zehalites and all of the allies cheered them on, while a very minority were kindled. A majority were kindled in the north, where the kingdom of Selig was. King Ichabod then declared war on Zehah Enom and sought for Cook to join them, but Cook would not because of their king. This kindled Ichabod, so he sought to siege Cook. In response, the king of Isham and the king of Zehah Enom sailed to defend Cook, but they failed as they took over Cook. But behold, they found not Ben Cook, for he fled and lived in Zehah Enom and took a wife there. Now the kingdom of Selig had sole control over the children of Flammis, which pleased Ichabod much. Ichabod then mocked the Zehalites' god, and he was struck and died, and his son, Ishyam, reigned in his stead. However, Ishyam was a hardcore Flammis follower, and turned not from the ways of Ish-Tanin and Flammis. This left King Zeth dismayed. King Ishyam embraced the organization of the children of Flammis with all of his soul, strength, and mind, and he was corrupted by them, and practiced their rituals. He danced and played the bongos each time the children of Flammis sacrificed unto Ish-Tanin. The Zehah Enomite spies saw this, and reported it to King Zeth, and his heart sank upon the news. Chapter 20. Their wickedness spread and influenced many nations on this occasion. When Zehah Enom declared war on Selig, the Zehah Enomites fell in battle before Selig, causing the Zehalites and their allies to question, and they wondered, "Did the glory of Enom depart from Zehah?" They began to despise King Zeth and his family, for they questioned the stability of the empire as the might of the soldiers began to wax faint. Zeth attempted again to gain territory of Selig with the assistance of Hud, but they fled before them, with their tails between their legs. And the children of Flammis mocked the Zehah Enomites' empire. Many people from Zehah Enom, Hud, Azah, Arah, Zatu, and Arshavir turned to Ish-Tanin, and each became a member of the children of Flammis, and they committed unspeakable evils in the land. Ishyam was a mad king, for he wore piercings upon his face, he bore tattoos depicting Flammis, and his countenance was that of being spoiled and insanity. He was the worst king that all of the land of Arthunis had ever seen. Not even the enemies that Enom had defeated can be compared to him. Aisha would not have asked his hand in marriage. Meza would not have thought to conquer his land. Terror would have refused to devour him, and Flammis would have just stood there and laughed upon seeing that insane man of sodomy. Many Zealites at this time opposed their king and his family, while many more still supported and defended them from the children of Flammis. King Ethnan, the son of King Benaiah of Tanin, went forth with King Joram, the son of King Joku, the son of King Zekiah of Zalmon. They presented themselves before King Zeth in his throne, and King Ethnan said unto the king, "O king, thou knowest that King Joram is married to my daughter, Anita, and she hath borne him a son who he named Nish. But behold, my daughter is seeing another man, one that is a child of Flammis. I pray thee, spare her life, let her serve for the rest of her life, for she is a mother." King Zeth hearkened unto his voice. He went down and took her, and gave her unto her husband, who he then brought to justice. And Zeth slew the child of Flammis, who she had an affair with. When the children of Flammis heard of it, they were kindled and burned Tanin, and laid siege to Zalmon. Zehah Enom attempted to assist, but they waxed faint, and King Ethnan was burned. Thus the second kingdom of Tanin was no more. While under siege at Zalmon, Anita slew her own husband, and sacrificed her son, and reigned as queen there alone, and the children of Flammis left her alone. This grieved King Zeth and the children of Zehah. Chapter 21. Then began the children of Zehah to turn against their own king when they were being slain, helpless against the children of Flammis. The children of Flammis prevailed against the Zehah Enomite empire, even against all the allied kingdoms and nations. They then departed for Zehah Enom, abandoning their homes, which the children of Flammis had conquered. Ishyam ate the corpses of his victims raw and went in unto them. The thing which he did out of pleasure and hatred toward Enom and Arthun was evil. Now all of the nations except for Enom were conquered by Salik. All those who survived and despised the children of Flammis fled to Enom, being as one man. Ishyam knew of the act which Queen Anita had done, so he went and took her to wife, and they ruled all of the world together, besides that of Enom, for it alone remains from the hand of the children of Zeha. And the land gave a cry, and was against the children of Flammis. Sales, Zetuites' wife, wept and prayed earnestly, while Uel shook in his spot. The children of Zeha casted stones toward the palace of Mount Casia, accusing them, saying, Arthun hath abandoned us. Zeth is no Enom, therefore let us kill them. Those loyal of all nations fended off the Zealites. The only Zealites that remained loyal was the royal family themselves. The Zealites submitted to the children of Flammis when they conquered the land, and the empire was no more. All that remained was Mount Casia. All who gave unto the warning were there. Zeth had reigned for 2 years and was 70 years old when one came up from the kingdom of Ortuna and smote his way through the children of Flammis and through the children of Zeha into Mount Casia. There he said to them, It is time, the time of Arthun's wrath has come. Take everyone here with you and your belongings, even the records you possess. Follow me once you've done so. King Zeth gave the crown to the Ortunian to give to Arthun. He then went and gathered all with him on Mount Keziah, within the walls which his father had built. All of the Ishamites, the Hudites, the Azahites, the Arahites, the Kukites, the Zetuites, the Arshavirites, Selig and his family were all there. They gathered their belongings and their records and followed the Ortunian out the palace and migrated westward out of danger, following the Ortunian as their guide. And it came to pass, when all those who gave into the warning of Arthun were departed, and all that remained were those who gave into the voice of Flammis on the land. Arthun came upward with his army, and stormed the land of Arthunis. They smote all the living they saw on the land, even King Ishyam and Queen Anita, all the children of Flammis, all the children of Zeha, all the remaining Kukites, the remaining Seligites, the remaining Tananites, the remaining Zalmanites, the remaining Arahites, the remaining Slimes, the remaining Azahites, the remaining Hudites, the remaining Arshavirites, the remaining Ishamites, the remnant of the giants, and all else who remained. When all were dead, Arthun claimed the land and formed a dome over the land that no man could break. All who attempted to return would be slain in sight. And the land was cleansed of all evil and back into the hands of Ortuna. The Zeha Enomite Empire lasted for a total of 82 years, and 2 emperors sat on its throne. All who departed and hearkened unto the cry of Arthun were spared, hundreds of souls in all. When they knew of what happened, they halted and wept for a time. Then they arose and departed once again. Chapter 22. They migrated to be in exile from the land where they would repopulate. On the way there, some complained and turned back to re-enter the land of Arthunis, thinking that they'll be spared if they join the children of Flammis. When they tried, they were smitten on sight. 40 souls died then, and it grieved Zeth. Zeth and all those there gave glory and praise to their God for sparing them. They were led into the land of Artunis, where Zeth blessed each group, and they all part ways to live their lives and multiply. The family of Enom remained left besides the married daughters and continued following the Ortunian. The Ortunian led them to a beautiful hill, which they named Menal. The Ortunian the departed, and they moved in and lived on that hill. They pitched their tents and built an altar, and offered up a burnt offering, giving thanks from being spared from the cleansing of the land of Arthunis. And it came to pass that 8 years had passed, and Zeth fell sick. His brothers strived with him, and he blessed each of them, and they parted ways. Only the tribe of Zeth remained on Manial, as the other tribes inhabited the land around the hill below. Zeth was stricken ill to his bed, and knew that he would die only 8 years after they had arrived on Manal. He called forth his sons, Asun, Tela, Kish, and Juma, and he blessed them, saying, Go forth and multiply, fulfill the word, and start your families. Asun, thou shalt be chief in my stead. Once these sayings have ceased, he gave up the ghost, and he died. He was then buried on Manial, and after him his brothers likewise died, and were buried in their own lands. Asun was then chief of Zeth in his father's stead. Chapter 23. And these are what occurred of the other peoples once they have parted. In Artunis, the Hudites became the Hudites. They populated somewhere central, in between two waters, on a narrow land of Artunis. Naus of Hud begat Shobab, Ahi, Zul, Ner, and Jalon. From Shobab came forth the Shobabians. From Ahi came forth the Ahians. From Zul came forth the Zulthians. An enemy of Enom, from Ner came forth the Nerites, and from Jalon came forth the Jalonites, mighty men of Hud. And Jerumea was founded by Jar, son of Jalon. In time each became their own country, and Hud was no more. Ish ben Uzzah became the Uzzahites, Avaram became the Avramites, and Yom-Ish became the Yomishites. They and the Ishamites inhabited the land to the northeast of Artunis, and Isham was no more. Ben Kuk and the Kukites inhabited islands in the sea to the east. Over time, the Kukites were no more, and they became the Umalites. Fahid begat Bushi, the same as the one who rode the phoenix of their new land, and the Azahites were no more, and the Bushians now inhabited that land, and were trained in the art of their first samurai. They inhabited the land north of the eastern sea, above the swamp peninsula. Dion begat Ehul, Ehul begat Toqui. Toki was formed, and Ara was no more. Emra begat Ishtah, Ishtah begat Ishtah-Ra, and Ishtah-Ra begat Septu, the first pharaoh of Setu. The same are the people of Zetu, who adopted the new name, Setu, and they inhabited the desert and the savanna to the central north. Now Selig somewhat separated himself from the Enomites, and inhabited the Mesa biome next to the land of Enom. Selig begat 3 sons, Zereth, Admon, and Zud. Admon strove against his brothers, and this resulted in Zereth moving to the western coastal mesa, far from his family, thus leaving Admon the eldest. In that land, Zereth begat many children, and the nation of Zereth was formed on that coast. Admon was a wicked man who established idolatry from the influence of one Setuit who he befriended. Admon even took his daughter to wife. The Setuit was a man who went by the name Emyal, and Emyal's daughter was Beta. Beta bore Admon's sons, Ahijah, Tomu, Jarmun, and Cal. Admon and Zud were constantly at war, and the Admonites wiped Zud off the map within 200 years of being in Artunis, and the Selegites were no more. And these were the generations of Admon. Beta bore Admon's sons, Ahijah, Tomu, Jarmun, and Kal. Ahijah begat Utz, and Jar. Tomu begat Rael, Jarmun begat Ian, Neam, Ortun, Der, and Ham. And Cal begat Quash and Homel. The family of Homel and the family of Quash went to war against one another, as the country of Admon was divided into smaller family tribes in those days. And the family of Der took advantage, as they were the most powerful family in those days, and sided with Quash. Der begat Ish, Ish begat Van, Van begat Jen, and Jen begat Ham, the first king of Admon, and wiped out the Zultites who were under Zalthan then. Ham ruled over the city of Ethul, and his wife was Zamnia, the daughter of Zamora, the daughter of Dan-Yam, the son of Quash, who fought against Homel. Ham died, and Canba was king. His city was Alian, then he died, and Zad of the family of Homel was king. The war ended with Quash in those days. Zad died, and Ihan was king, and his city was Ithul. In his days they occupied the land of Enom, as they were captive under the Setuites. Ihan died, and his son Emra-Al maintained power as king. Then he died, and Hom-Al of the family of Jar was king. His city was Toroqui, and he died. Amal was king. Then he died, and Az was king. He died, and Ne was king. Then he died, and Alan was king. He died, and No was king. He died, and Cain of the family of was king. He died, then Gan was king. These were the kings of Admon before Enom had any king. And Admon's capital city was Ethul. Chapter 24. Chief Asun built a community on Mount Manal, setting the foundation of a city there for the Zethites, even founding a well there named Mayaan. One Telahite named Ishman, and one Selahite named Ser, both willingly became the servants of Chief Asun, after seeing everything flourish that he touched. He performed faithful prayers and sacrifices upon the altar there he built. Some of the children of Enom strove against one another due to the lands they possessed, and were especially jealous over Zeth's inheritance. But this all changed when the Admonites mocked and intimidated the Enomites due to a difference between them which the Admonites found despiteful. They laid raids on their villages, and the Enomites retaliated and won. Asun gave thanks to their God and blessed him. Often he would tell stories of Enom, their ancestor, to his people to remind them of many points of his life that can be reflected on themselves. Chief Asun was chief over the children of Zeth for 64 years, and then he died, and his son, Utan, was chief in his room. Utan was chief for 28 years when Pharaoh Septu came and took the children of Enom captive, for they sinned in Utan's days as he encouraged them by the influence of Admon. When they were taken away from the land, it no longer prospered, and crops would not grow, and it wasn't as green as in Zeth's days. The children of Enom were in Artunis for 100 years and were taken captive. They were captive for 400 years and prayed for a deliverer after they repented. Zeth ruled for a time over the children of Enom, and then he died. After his death, Asun his son led the children of Enom for a time, then he died, and his son Utan led the children of Enom for a time, till they sinned and were taken captive into a harsh land. They cried there and prayed for a deliverance to one day come, once their time of discipline was over, and they longed for the day to return back.